Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Today we're going to do our Wednesday reading lesson in the iReady book. So if you have your book, you can go to page 246. 246, it's going to look like this. And the story we're working on today is The Unsinkable Titanic by Julianne Green. So we're actually going to be reading a magazine article, and we're going to talk about who's writing the article. Is it somebody who actually was there, they have a first-hand account of what happened, or is it somebody who heard about it or read about it and they actually have a second-hand account of what happened? So yesterday we talked about first-hand and second-hand account. Remember, a first-hand account is when it's somebody who actually experienced it. And the second-hand account is somebody who heard about it, or they read about it, or they did research about it. So I'm going to go ahead and read the story to you. Then we're going to go back and underline some clues that help us figure out, was it a first-hand or a second-hand account with the magazine article. If you see something in there that you want to underline while I'm reading, go ahead and do that. That maybe is helping you. Not all clues are going to help everybody, but sometimes a clue may help you decide if it's a first or second-hand account, whereas a different clue may help someone else decide if it's a first or second-hand account. So I'm going to read The Unsinkable Titanic. For more than 100 years, the story of the Titanic has fascinated people. It was the largest passenger steamship ever built, already world famous when it was launched. One magazine probably called it unsinkable, but that pride would crumble on Titanic's first voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. There were 2,240 passengers and crew on that voyage. The ship left Southampton, England on April 10, 1912. It was scheduled to reach New York City 10 days later. But at 11:30 on the night of April 14th, the Titanic hit an iceberg that tore the ship's massive hull. As the vessel took on water, it began to sink. The ship's captain told his radio operator to call for help. Then he ordered the crew to lower the lifeboats. In the panic, fleeing passengers launched most of the boats with several empty seats. By 2:20 the next morning, 3 hours after striking the iceberg, the Titanic had sunk. Another ship, the Carpathia, was 58 miles away when it received the distress call. The Carpathia rushed to rescue the survivors. Only 705 people were saved. Newspaper headlines around the world announced the loss of the unsinkable ship. It quickly became the subject of countless books and films. In fact, the first Titanic movie appeared just a month later, starring one of the survivors. British and American officials tried to discover the causes of the disaster. They looked at everything from the way the ship was built to the action of the crew. In the end, the main lesson of the Titanic was that no ship is truly unsinkable. So if we look at that and look at all the details that the author put in the story, we would be able to tell if this was a first or second-hand account. So there's some clues that would help us with this. So some of the clues we would underline would be, for more than 100 years, the story of the Titanic has fascinated people. We could underline April 14th, the Titanic hit an iceberg that tore open the ship's massive hull. These are giving time. More than 100 years, time. April 14th, a date. The ship's captain told his radio operator to call for help. Told. So it's giving you something in the past. Only 705 people were saved, giving you a total. So that would have to be after the fact, right? You couldn't know 705 people were saved right there at that moment if you were actually there. Newspaper headlines around the world announced the loss. Became the subject of countless books and films, so you know it had to be something in the past. Officials tried to discover the cause of the disaster. So people were trying to discover what had caused it. So if you look at the next page, it said, who would write a first-hand account about the sinking of the Titanic? Remember, in a first-hand account, a writer describes an experience. In a second-hand account, the writer focuses on reporting many different details about the event. So who would write the first-hand account about the sinking of a Titanic? It would be a person who witnessed the sinking of the Titanic. So somebody who was there, who actually experienced it. They were on the ship. They were the crew, the captain, somebody who actually survived. So for a first-hand account, it has to be someone who actually went through the experience. So who would write a second-hand account? Well, that would be a person who only heard or read about the sinking of the Titanic. So the person who wrote this magazine article would be writing a second-hand account. They heard about it. They read about it. Maybe they saw it in the newspaper. Maybe somebody told them who was on the ship, but they actually weren't on the ship. So this magazine article would be a second-hand account. So it says reread the magazine article. Do you think this is a first-hand or second-hand account? Find the evidence in the selection to support what you think. Well, we already said because it is a magazine article and it's talking about things that we wouldn't know unless we had read about them or researched, we know it's a second-hand account. So we would put, it's a second-hand account because the author says people have been fascinated by the sinking of the Titanic for over 100 years, showing it's in the past. So looking at that, we would know just by seeing some of the things and the details that the author gives us that there's no way it was a first-hand account because he wouldn't have most of those details. So let's go ahead and we're going to turn to page 250 and it's going to look, oh, I'm sorry, it's going to look like that, the unsinkable Titanic. And it says, how would the facts in paragraph 2 and 3 of the passage differ if a passenger on the Titanic described the disaster? So let's go back and look at 2 and 3. So 2 talks about how many passengers were on there. It gives you some times, it gives you some dates. 3 talks about some more, how the captain radioed for help, how there were only 700 people who survived. So if you were a passenger at the time, you wouldn't know all these details. You would kind of be in a panic, right? You may know about the lifeboats being lowered and fleeing passengers. You may know that, but you're going to probably not know that the captain radioed for help. You're going to not know for sure that only 700 people survived. So those details would be what you would get from research. So that's how we know that it was a second-hand account. So what could we put? So we would put the passenger would not know specific times or details about distress calls. Also, they may not even know the ship is already actually sinking, just that they are in danger. So at the time people were on the ship, they just knew that the ship was taking on water. And like they thought this ship was unsinkable. So a lot of them in that moment didn't think the ship was actually going to sink. They just thought they were in danger. You know, when the ship starts to take on water, there's lots of other dangers. You know, there's the danger of things crumbling. There's the danger of electricity, you know, causing the water to be electric. So there's lots of other dangers. So in that moment, somebody who is actually on the ship isn't going to know all of those kind of details. So if you need to pause this, go ahead and pause it. Don't forget to do the social studies that was on Tuesday's slide, and then also to do Thursday's on today's slides. Okay, so I hope you had a great Wednesday, and I will see you guys. Try to join our Zoom if you get a chance at 9 a.m. All right, have a good Wednesday, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.